first one is for, I will start with Dan, but in reality it's for the whole team. So all of you, Dan first, that all of you talk about analytics and research. And it was a kind of tangential type of presentation. And for the ones that are not involved in the details, what is the meaning of analytics and research? What is it behind it? Can you expand about that concept?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start by saying that analytics in the wrong hands is dangerous, right? Because really the critical piece to analytics is the insight that you draw from it. And the reality is that digital, especially as Bobby alluded to, right? I mean, you can track down to the nth degree as it relates to identifying the overall success, right, and/or propensity for success within a particular, product to a particular consumer there within a particular region. So, it's a really difficult question to answer because, I really do think that it is a critical piece to business success today, but it actually starts with identifying ultimately what are the business objectives that you're setting out for, and what are the key performance indicators that you want to measure, week over week, month over month, quarter over quarter, right? And then making sure that you put the plan in place, right, from a data standpoint to map against those KPIs that hopefully ladder up to the business.
Is there anything other panelists want to add to that?
For marketing, it's always been the dream to actually be able to calculate a return on investment on your marketing dollar. And now with digital, that's becoming a reality. It's very difficult, and there have been companies who've made their livings by working with large companies and trying to get the right marketing mix. How much should I spend on TV, radio, print? But now with something so trackable as digital, you can actually know what consumer bought your product and how much they paid for it, and actually what it cost you to connect with them. And so it becomes much easier to calculate a return on your marketing investment.
Very good.
I'll just add one last thing. In the global space, we find that retailers are frightened of a lot of the things that I was talking about, and that all of us are talking about, the fraud, the operational things, but analytics are familiar. And you find that a merchant in the U.S., if they're even a fairly sophisticated e-commerce merchant, they are obsessing about their website analytics already. So they've got a great handle on what's going on domestically. And it's a matter of finding where's the sweet spot, what are the important metrics from an international perspective, and how do you make those relevant, especially as you compare against what your performance in the U.S. and your domestic market looks like.
Yeah, let me just add to that as well, if I can, that one of the growing dynamics around data from an internet standpoint is not necessarily, from a data standpoint, we talk about implicit and explicit data, right? And so you can actually have that personal identifiable information around specific customers that you can mine and create segments within your own existing data. But the digital world also allows you to leverage cookie-based data, which is all behavioral driven. And as we once did back in the direct mail, where you would actually buy addresses, right? And in the email list age, where you would buy email, you can actually buy cookie pools of data, which is liked behavior. And there are media and there are network outlets if you search online for that ultimately, if John, is selling to a specific group online that ultimately are purchasing this type of product or servicing this type of fundraiser, he can marry that data with other liked behaviors, right, and begin to advertise and track against, again, what is not necessarily personal identifiable information, but they tend to have similar behaviors online, so it's assumed, right, that they're of a liked segment, and you can advertise and market accordingly. So very interesting dynamics of how digital is growing.
So we're the under-resourced people, and what I can tell you is that the analytics that are out there are tough to manage, not always accurate depending on how you skew a question or two out of 100. And what we are in the process of doing is solidifying our software technology on a three-legged stool. The web, importing into the accounting system, exporting into the CRM, so that the analytics we create going forward will do two things. Number one, tell us how to continuously improve our website for transaction and conversion-related failure. And the second thing that it will do will be our lens finder to rifle in on the buying customer when she wants it.
Very interesting questions and answers, and I think that, like everybody else, before buying, I try to search. I go to the web. I'm one of the 80% of people searching about a product, and then I learn that we, as a consumer, we are identified by a cookie, and then I leave a page. I go to the USA Today with the newspapers, and suddenly pop-ups came and start to selling the products I was searching for. What is the logic and what is the, I would say, the rationale between the convenience of buying in the web and searching in the web versus the privacy?
Well, there's a fine balance there, and you know, I think there is a convenience element that consumers have voted and starting to say they're going to give up some of their privacy to achieve some of that convenience, you know, because you know, it's phenomenal, but we can be tracked anywhere. I was telling Eduardo a story. I was recently on a trip to Japan, and being the good husband that I am, I dropped by to give my wife a gift on the way home to the Tokyo airport, and I had made the purchase, and 90 seconds later, my cell phone rang. It was my credit card company for Virginia wondering if I had made a purchase in the Tokyo airport, and that's a great example of. Yeah, I don't know if I liked getting that call or not. You know, in a way I did, because it said that they're on top of my, you know, any credit card fraud that might be out there. But certainly, it's a little bit eerie, and certainly, you know, even more so in the digital space, that behavior is more and more common. So I think it's something we'll all struggle with.
Something else on that point, as you get into certain global markets, there are restrictions on the amount of data that can be collected or whether you can collect anything at all. So if you're a U.S. merchant that is setting cookies in the browser domestically, you might find that when you go to Europe, it's prohibited. You've got to give a buyer the option. They have to opt into having a cookie set on their site, on their computer. So you would actually be in violation of the law by just automatically doing that and applying those same business principles that you're used to in the U.S. So it becomes a huge issue on the legal front, and also it gets back to the experience side. You know, certain buyers are more sensitive to those privacy issues than maybe we're accustomed to here in the States, so you've got to be very sensitive to that.
Very good, Bobby. I have another question for you. As everybody does, I search. I bought a product, I receive it at home, now I don't like it, or it doesn't fit my needs. I return it, I put it in a box, send it by the mail. How do you manage that when you do business internationally? You have shipped to Australia, you explained before, you pay the duties, everything else. How do you get the returns?
Yeah, returns are tough. No one's got the silver bullet yet on the return process, but the way that we handle it is kind of in the reverse of the way that we do the outbound shipment. So we have partners in various regions of the world, and certainly in the English-speaking countries, and the ones that we're seeing more volume, that serve as consolidation points. So a buyer in Germany ends up wanting to return a pair of shoes. They would actually ship it to a consolidation point in Germany, and we would bring it back into the U.S. One of the benefits of prepaying the duties on the front end of the transaction is that those duties can then be drawn back at return. So we handle all of that duty drawback as well. But what you do find is that international return rates are significantly lower than they would be in the U.S. So if you're used to seeing a 20% return number domestically, you're probably going to see a 2 to 3% maybe return rate. And in some markets, Latin America especially, we just don't see any returns. It's not part of the culture. It's just not something that you experience. So I think you see that the two things that drive it are the ease of being able to make a return happen and the expense. It's really expensive to bring merchandise back into the U.S. So we end up destroying a lot of it actually in market rather than having it come back into the States.
I hope you're the next for Ferraris.
Yeah. Those get destroyed in my house.
Okay. I have a question for John. You transformed yourself and your business from being a manufacturer and retailer to have, as you share with the audience today, 75% of your sales are web-based. How do you change your operation? How did you align your business, your people, your teammates to this transformation?
On the backs of opportunity and insight, the changes that we're making on the back end of our business, how do we move a broad variety from point A to point B, is in alignment with a world where every order is an individual's order. And so we had to shed the mentality of being a manufacturer and step into the world of higher level service.
Great. Well, I would like, we are short of time, so we would like to open the audience for questions, and Louis and the IBC members will walk through the room with the microphone, so if you raise your hands, we can identify who is interested.
At least I think I heard you right, that now that you built this platform of manufacturing that then goes to, on a service level, the client and bringing product to them, did you infer that, that then kind of portfolio expansion might be something on your radar screen, or now that you've got this infrastructure, would you be delivering potentially other things to this 25 to 65-year-old client, female client, or are you staying kind of rifle focused just on that which you manufacture?
Well, in short, I think we're building a template. In longhand, I think that the world of retail is changing in such a significant way that it would be foolish to look at somebody in a family that spends 85% of the disposable income or more and bypass an opportunity to serve her better.
There was a question.
My question is for Dan. Dan, we're in the business-to-business side of the world. So our marketing mix is really comprised of, we have an extensive field sales force. We do a lot of trade show participation, and we do some limited advertising in trade magazines. We have the electronic connection with our distributors, but not so much with our direct customers. How do you see e-commerce and this whole digital revolution affecting the business-to-business side of the world?
Yeah, I think from a B2B standpoint, the biggest influence has been more on the knowledge share, right, and established relationships that certainly can be delivered and built through digital. It requires really connecting with the influencers as much as those that hold the purse within the overall business, right, and making sure that you're providing the tools necessary for them to connect and communicate the wares of your business, right? I need to know a little bit more about the business per se to answer the question on commerce. I mean, so, but and even if it's tires per se that you're selling, but the reality is probably better to establish more of a CRM sort of approach first and foremost to making sure that you have this rich thought, knowledge share sort of operation happening, those between, again, those that hold purse and those that are influencers, right, within the industry and business that you guys are attracting.
Question for John. On the shipping cost, seems to me if you ship a container load of pasta to Japan, your cost per unit is pretty small. But when you start shipping one $5 package at a time, the shipping cost could be far more than the product cost.
That's right, and those costs in the U.S. are going up, and home delivery for us is not logistics, it's strategy. And the better we get in the U.S., the more likely we are to succeed in Europe. But the value proposition for her purchase has got to be right, and it's far more likely that we can serve her effectively over 4 bags than under 4 bags.
So I'm in print media. We have the city paper, Nashville Post, all of these local products, and we've expanded into different markets throughout the U.S. Everyone knows print media is changing. So we have a slew of digital options for our clients and for people we work with. What we find that we're struggling with is getting the client to understand the value of things like a product we have called the DAN, Digital Ad Network, where we can connect a client with the consumer, not just through our sites, but through any site in the world, based on what the type of people who are visiting those sites. What sort of data, or where do you get your data to go to your higher-ups, for example, to say this is why we should be online, this is why we should be reaching the consumer this way as opposed to just in print? Any advice would be very much appreciated.
My background is the print business, and I can tell you that as we've matured through this digital ramp-up, there are new line items in place for print, and I think there is a relevant place for print in terms of building awareness. The challenge is, I think, is secondary marketing for us. Our primary marketing online is so rich that those are very tough numbers to compare.
We have time for one question more, if any. Okay. Very good. We are about to wrap up. Before I make the closing and we make the drawing, I would like to, we all offer a big round of applause for the panel. It was a great discussion.